football's middle eight strategy is discussed. NFL teams made some moves in last week's trade deadline, and the MLS Cup moves into conference semifinals after international play. Plus, your sports questions answered. That's coming up next. Let's go! It's the Lurks Lessons Show, your weekly deep dive into the most impactful stories from the professional sporting leagues around the country. We'll analyze, discuss, and uncover the lessons they offer. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Jeff Lurkey, and if this is your first time, welcome to Lurks Lessons, an online platform that helps educate you on sports educational content here on YouTube, and then also you can listen to this show on Spotify. And if you like what you hear or see, stick around, okay? So first of all, also happy Veterans Day to all the veterans that are listening, and to anybody that has a veteran in their family. Thank you for your service. And today is Tuesday, November 11th. So today I kind of want to give you a quick update on the channel before we dive into our topics. And that is obviously from last week I should say, we have the World Series MLB ebook now officially live. 140 pages of fun facts of every single World Series that has been played. So if you want to dive into that wonderful history and world, link is in the description for you to go ahead and check that out. But big announcement for the channel is I've decided on what video I want to do next for the channel. And I kind of teased I was leaning toward a sports 101 football video, and I've chosen to do offensive formations. So that should go live either by the end of the year in December, or hopefully before the Super Bowl in February. That's just kind of like the window. I know that's like 2 months in between, but it takes me some time to design, animate, write, voiceover, all that stuff when it comes to these extended, highly animated videos, okay? So I'm debating on whether or not I should do 8 to 10 formations, but that's still in the mix, but that will be the next video for the channel. So stick around for that. Cool. All right, so as teased at the top of the show, one of the things that I recently heard some of these coaches talk about, usually like whenever the half, if you're watching a football game, let's start there. And one of the coaches usually gets interviewed right before half. And they typically, I've heard it multiple times, they keep saying this term, middle eight. We got to win the middle eight. And that was novel to me. I don't remember in my previous years watching football when I was a teenager that I've ever heard that term before. And so I kind of wanted to dive into it, and I discovered that there's this whole strategy in football called the middle eight. And I'm like, if I'm just now hearing this and learning this, I'm sure my listeners and other people out there like yourself, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so today I'm diving into that. So what is middle eight when it comes to football? And I'll read this. It's the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half when it comes to the middle eight, okay? It is essentially if you score at the end of the first half and you know you're getting the ball at the beginning of the second half, just because at the very beginning of the game there's a coin flip. Whoever wins the coin toss chooses if they want to kick or receive. And so if the team that elects to receive, or better yet kick, at the beginning of the game will receive the ball in the second half, okay? So already knowing that, if the team that is already expected to receive the ball in the second half, they can probably play as, let's go ahead and score quickly at the end of the first half, so that way we have another opportunity to score without giving the ball to the opposing team for them to score. You see what I mean? Because in the midst of a game, it goes back and forth, regardless of possession. Like the other team will have to have possession, and then it's up to your team to turn over on downs or get a turnover to prevent them from scoring. This eliminates that opportunity. It's essentially, we're going to get the ball the second half. We can go ahead and try to be very aggressive and score here, okay? So that's essentially all it is. Middle eight means the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half, just in that time zone, okay? And so they found out that, if you win, quote unquote, if you win during this stretch, is a strategic goal for the team, because not only does it lead to points, but it forces the opposing team to play catch up and kind of sets the tone for the second half. Okay, so just as I described, let's say that you're the team that is going to receive the ball in the second half. Well, you get a turnover from your defense, and so now you have the ball with, let's say, 2.5 minutes to go. If you kick a field goal and score, that's 3 points. Okay, so you just score 3 points. And then in the opening part of the second half, your offense scores a touchdown and the ensuing extra point. That's 7 points. So that right there is a 10-point swing within 8 minutes. Okay, so now the opposing team is like, okay, we're down 2 scores because you can't score more than 8 points in one possession. So that's where it's like, okay, so you have 2 scores to catch up to take the lead. So that's a huge momentum shift if you win, quote unquote, the middle 8. Okay, so that's where that, if you hear like the 2-for-1 advantage, that's essentially what that is. It's a swing of momentum, and now you're faced with an opportunity to not only bury the team that you're facing, but also to really extend the lead. And you can play a little bit more conservative on the offensive side to run the clock. So that's where this middle 8 term is very, very popular now. Okay, so that is what middle 8 is. That is what middle 8 is. That didn't make any sense. Cool. All right, so moving on to our next topic. As I spoke last week about the NFL trade deadline, about, hey, here are some teams that are at the top of the pool and they are probably going to make a push or a swing to either make some trades to further their goal of winning the Super Bowl this year. And then on the other side of that spectrum of like some of the teams that are probably struggling, aren't going to make a deep run, are probably going to move some assets to free up opportunities to rebuild in the future. That happened. And so again, I record these shows on Tuesday, and so it's right now recording time is in the morning session, so it's not even afternoon yet. And last week, the trade deadline ended at 4 p.m. And sure enough, that just played out. And what's just kind of cool is sometimes like when you predict something and it actually comes true. I mentioned about the Colts being 7-2 last week. And well, they made a trade for the unfortunate New York Jets. And the New York Jets right now has literally done a fire sale. So I kind of want to talk about that, especially the Colts and Jets trade. So that way you can kind of understand some of the business decisions that are happening. And it's kind of like a big chess match. Okay. So let's just land the plane with this, with the Jets, what they did right before the trade deadline. They essentially got rid of like 2 of their standout players, both on defense. Okay. Their first one that's the most notable is Sauce Gardner. He is a cornerback. And he plays on the defensive side. So his job is essentially to guard the wide receiver, a wide receiver that he's matched up with. Okay. He's very, very good. He was drafted in the first round. I think it was about 4 years ago. And so the Colts went ahead and got him. They traded a wide receiver from their ranks, but they also traded 2 future first round picks in 26 and in 27 for this guy. Okay. The Jets also got rid of a defensive tackle, Quinnen Williams. They traded him to the Dallas Cowboys. They received a second-round pick, a 27 first-round pick from Dallas, and then also another defensive tackle. So the Jets kind of looked at their season, and it's a big disappointment. They just won this past weekend against the Browns in a very weird way, but a win's a win. And when it comes to football, no matter how ugly, and they're pretty much are throwing in the white flag and being like, yeah, we're not gonna make it anywhere this year, so we're just gonna reload with draft picks going forward. Okay. Whereas Indianapolis, they're sitting at the top of the conference of the AFC, and they're like, yep, we got our squad, and we just need to bolster it to go, and this is the year. Okay. So what does that look like with Indianapolis? Trading first round picks is a 50-50 option, but it's just essentially 50-50. The NFL draft is literally composed of all 32 teams based on how they land the previous year. I have a great video that explains it that you can see in the description / here on YouTube, but it essentially is whoever wins the Super Bowl is going to be the 32nd pick in the following draft. And whoever has the worst record based on tiebreakers and all that stuff gets the first pick. And then depending on where you land with your record and how far you made it to the playoffs is where you are seated. There are 7 rounds of picks, okay? In that structure, 1 to 32 is pretty much the same throughout every single round. Now, where it gets tricky is where, just as we discussed, you have a future second round pick. You have a future first round pick being shuffled between teams to make these trades. So somebody is keeping track of all of these trades. So that way it's like, okay, so the Jets going into the 2026 draft, depending on where they land, they will probably get their own position of I would say they'll probably land maybe in the top 5. Depends on how the rest of the season goes. Right now, I think they only have 1 or 2 wins. So they will land in the top 5 and they will get their own pick. But then let's say the Colts do make it all the way to the Super Bowl, whether they win or not, then they will get the 31st or 32nd first round. Okay. So that whole concept kind of changes your strategy, especially when you look at your needs as a football franchise and you see the pool of talent coming out of the collegiate ranks, who you want to draft for. And you can also be a little bit more aggressive too. So that's where it's very interesting that the Colts already gave up 2 first rounders. That's pretty big, okay? Not to say that they can't find some really good talent deeper in the ranks. It's just whenever you get rid of a first pick, that's where people eyebrows raised are like, oh, okay. And not only 1, but 2 future first rounds, okay? So the Jets are kind of sitting happy with that. But at the same time, it's like, depending on who they pick and depending on how that player translates to the NFL and how big of their impact truly is, that's the only way that you can look at this trade and evaluate, was it a good trade? It's really hard to predict with what first round draft picks go by. So it would be interesting to see what the leadership of the Jets do going forward. But on the flip side of that coin, it's very interesting to see how the Colts will perform from here on out. Okay. They bolstered their defense with Sauce Gardner. He's a very, very good cornerback. And right now, like they just won against the Falcons in overtime when they played in Germany over the weekend. And so they're continuing to be running. It's very impressive to see the Colts success this season. So we'll see if they can. They'll definitely run the South. I don't see anybody in their division, the AFC South, coming close to beating them. But we'll see how they fare within the AFC conference, or just the AFC, I should say. So I just wanted to follow up with what we spoke to last week on the NFL trade deadline about you're going to see some teams make some moves. Well, we did see that on both sides of the spectrum of how some teams are reshuffling to look ahead to the future and how some teams are kind of doubling down on this season and putting their eggs all in this basket and to make a run. So comment below on what you think this Indy / Jets trade is, and what other NFL trades that you thought was pretty crucial at the trade deadline. Okay, let me hear your thoughts. I would love to see that. All right, so as we move along, we got another bracket to show, and I'm enjoying brackets, man. First of all, I love creating brackets, designing them, and I have on screen now the MLS Cup bracket now that we move into the conference semis. So yeah, this took me a full day to kind of lay out. And what's also really nice too is I made this in a way where I can literally change whatever team in these slots to make it recyclable going throughout the years to come. So I'm going to make a full screen for you to see in its glory. But we have the conference semifinals essentially set going into not this weekend, but next weekend. And I want to talk about that. But yeah, the first round is officially wrapped. And as you can see by the table, all the higher seeds ended up advancing except for one. New York City FC defeated Charlotte, and they were the 5th seed, beating the 4th seed, which I sometimes kind of toss those up since they're so closely seated together. But it was a 2-1 result. And They get to face the Supporters Shield winner of Philadelphia Union in the conference semis. So going forward, I want to make sure that we touched on it on a couple of shows back, and this is where now in the conference semifinals, it's a single elimination match. If it is tied, there will be two 15-minute extra time periods to be played, and then after that, if tied again, they will go into penalty kicks. Okay, looking at the table right now. One, I'm very happy to see that San Diego is moving on. San Diego, this is their first year in the MLS. It's really awesome to see teams like this go pretty far when they in their inaugural season. The fact that San Diego's first year, they're the first seed in the West. That's really, really cool. But on the flip side, the one that I'm really looking forward to is actually the Inter Miami versus FC Cincinnati on the East side. You got number 3 versus number 2. And I look at that match, that's the one I would really want to watch. That's just in my own opinion. I'm not going to sway you otherwise if you want to watch any of the other 3 matches. But doing a little bit of research on this is so let's talk about Inter Miami. Inter Miami FC actually signed, well, first of all, they were founded in 2018, okay? They made a huge signing in 2023. The GOAT of the sport, Lionel Messi, okay? He's from Argentina. The dude has so many accolades. He is a generational talent. He comes over to the MLS, which gives the MLS some street cred, okay? To kind of paint a picture here, soccer is probably the hardest leagues to fully grasp when it comes to player loans, player management. Like for Americans to hear me say this, imagine, let's say LeBron James gets loaned out to play in Barcelona, Spain's league, okay, for an extended period of time, and then comes back here stateside and suits up for the Lakers. That would seem kind of weird, right? That happens a lot when it comes to soccer, okay? Like most of these teams some of them has at least 1 or 2 players, quote unquote, on loan from another team, either across the pond or somewhere else, like south. And like, it's crazy on how that happens. And I sometimes have a trouble to wrap my brain around that. But all that to say is, Lionel Messi has bumped around in multiple leagues throughout the world. He's mainly known for Barcelona, okay? So he comes over to the MLS and signs a deal. And when he came in July of 2023, that was later in the season, Miami actually lost to a regular season match that if they would have won, they would have made the playoffs that year. That was against FC Cincinnati, okay? The following season, they had a fantastic season, okay? They were very heavily favored to go far in the playoffs, but they got bounced in the first round to Atlanta United. And that is right now considered arguably one of the biggest upsets in MLS soccer history when it comes to playoff performance, okay? So Miami actually, as you can see on the table, they beat Nashville 2-1. So they've survived the first round. So this is the farthest they've got in the postseason with Lionel Messi, okay? In their young history. Remember, they were founded in 2018. Well, their opponent, FC Cincinnati, they also were founded in 2015. So also a young club, but they also have had some struggles. Like they have not won the MLS Cup either. So they are also a very, very strong squad. I'm actually excited to see how this match will come about. And I predict whoever wins this match will make it to the MLS Cup. Not to kind of like rain on Philadelphia Union's parade, but I feel that these are the best teams out of the East. And they're going to give Philly or New York City FC, whoever wins that, a run for their money. So, yeah, I circle that on your calendar, okay? Now, I do want to touch on if you look at the dates, these conference semifinals won't start until November 22nd and runs to the 24th. And you're thinking, well, that's not next week, and that's the following week, and what's going on? So again, just how soccer works, which is crazy. They have what is known as international match calendar that is run by FIFA. FIFA is the overseeing body of every single soccer organization, okay? The FIFA World Cup is coming up next year, and what they have is called an international match calendar, which essentially means throughout the year during this week or extended time period. So, for example, this week from November 10th through the 18th, there's going to be 2 international friendly matches. And so for the United States will play Paraguay on the 15th, and then they'll play Uruguay on the 18th, which is a Tuesday, okay? So during this stretch, all international members of their respective countries are going back to their international squads to perform. And they do this 3 times or so many times throughout the year. So right now it's November. They'll do it again in March, and they'll do it again in June, okay? If you look at some of these squads on the MLS, it is a hodgepodge of world players. And they always have their national flag attached to their name, which is really cool. And the fact that you see more diversity with that, as far as different countries being represented on one of these MLS teams, that just shows that the MLS is continuing to rise when it comes to their not only popularity, but also their draw of these international players that choosing to play at the MLS, as opposed to, let's say, Juventus or these other really, really big leagues around the country, not around the country, but around the world. Okay. So I also wanted to share that to be yes, even in the midst of the MLS playoffs, some of these teams, if not all of these teams, have to step away to play international friendlies. Again, imagine the NBA, because again, there's more teams that play overseas with the NBA as opposed to football. Imagine after the first round of playoffs, everybody that's from different countries have to go play in the FIBA tournament and then come back and then play in the NBA tournament / NBA finals. It's really weird to wrap your head around that. If it's not you, it could just be me, but I think that's pretty weird. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this cup will play out. My heart is for definitely San Diego. I know LAFC has won one. New York City has won one. And that's the other thing too that I love about about just in general soccer, because you'll always see, if I'll make this large on screen again, if you look closely, I also have these little stars underneath the team's abbreviated name, okay? That star represents how many titles that club has won, okay? I think it's really cool. They do it on their patches / badges on their jerseys. But yeah, if you see right now on screen here, New York City FC and LAFC are the only 2 clubs remaining that actually has won the MLS Cup. So that's actually pretty cool that you have, out of the 8 teams, only 2 have won it in the past. So as I said back in other previous episodes, I cheer for the teams that have never won before. So that's really, really cool. So circle your calendars for that particular time. That's going to be not this weekend, but the following weekend is when these conference semis are going to happen. Cool. All right. So the college football rankings first time came out last week, and I even kind of showcased it or even teased about it. But my thought was that Oregon would leapfrog teams like Alabama and Georgia and get the number 3rd seed. I was wrong. They actually dropped to number 9. So as we literally only have 3 weeks left in the regular season before the conference championships take place. And so if we look at the top 5 teams right now, Ohio State has the game left on their schedule. Now, we'll talk about rivalries probably during rivalry weekend, but the game is probably the most iconic rivalry when it comes to college sports, and that is Ohio State versus Michigan, okay? The last 4 or 5 years, Ohio State has yet to beat Michigan to play in the Big Ten tournament, or excuse me, to play in the Big Ten championship. I think their last victory was back in 2019. That's how long, pre-COVID, if you can wrap your brain around that. That's kind of big because Michigan had curtailed them to play in the Big Ten championship. And then at that time, there was only 4 teams to be in the playoff. And so Michigan has always stopped Ohio State short. Can Michigan do it this year? Well, it's at Ann Arbor. They could give a little bit of a bruise, but at the same time, with the 12-team playoff, that I don't see Ohio State dropping so far that they wouldn't make the playoff. However, the other thing that you have to know is now that the Big Ten has 14 teams, the Big Ten Conference has done away with divisions. And so right now, the structure is, in the first time going into this season, is they're going to just take the best two teams. So with that being said, if Ohio State loses at Michigan, depending on how the chips fall within the conference, Michigan probably won't let them in. We'll see, because I think Michigan only has 1 loss, but all that to say is it's like Michigan could continue to play spoiler, and Ryan Day has always been on the hot seat at Ohio State for not beating Michigan. He's only beat them 1 time. That was back in 2019. So we'll see how that plays out. But before that, they have UCLA and Rutgers, which that they should take care of business. So right now, Ohio State looks poised to continue to be the number 1 team in the country. IU has pretty much nobody left to play spoiler. They have a bye. They have Wisconsin. They have Purdue. Both of those teams are at the bottom tier of the conference. So if IU decides to lay a goose egg, that's on them. They will definitely run the table and will play in the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis, which would be really, really cool for that school and also for Curt Cignetti and turning that program around. That's just awesome. I like the fact that you have Indiana Hoosiers, a prominent basketball school, making waves in the football ranks. That's just really cool. Texas A&M, the 3rd team, they should be undefeated until they play at Texas. If you remember, Texas was the number 1 team in the country in the preseason, and they have had a rocky, start since then. Now currently at 11, like they could play spoiler when against Texas A&M at the last game of the season. So Texas has an opportunity to just kind of bolster their resume and then also be a blemish on Texas A&M perfect season. So we'll see how that turns out. Alabama, the number 4 team, they play at home this weekend against Oklahoma, who is also in the top 15. They're ranked number 12 currently. But then they got some cake games afterwards. They got another throwaway game after that. And then they got their rivalry game, Auburn. And Auburn has not played well at all this year. And they just fired their head coach, Hugh Freeze. So Alabama, if they beat OU, they should have a clear cut going forward when it comes to their rest of the season. Now, Georgia plays Texas this weekend. So now we mentioned Texas will play A&M at their last game. Well, they play Georgia this weekend. So Texas is sitting there like, okay, we got Georgia and we got Texas A&M. We have an opportunity to kind of resurge and get our name back in the top 5. We'll see. But Georgia has to also then play Georgia Tech, their last home game. Now, Georgia Tech is not in the SEC. They're in the ACC, but that's always been a rivalry game for their squad or respective schools. But Georgia Tech is actually making some really strong noise. Like, they're not the highest ACC ranked team, but they've been playing some really good football. So Georgia has a strong schedule the rest of the way, but it'd be interesting to see who lands in the SEC championship game amongst those 3 schools when it comes to the top 5. Okay. Now, if you look at the entirety of the top 25, and I mentioned this a couple shows back, where there are some pundits out there that really take a tally on, okay, well, how many teams are in this conference and how many teams are in this conference that are in the top 25. So I did the math. And right now you have the Big Ten, since Ohio State's number 1, we're starting with the Big Ten. You have 7 schools. The SEC has the most with 9. ACC is next with 5, and then the Big 12 with 3. If you do all the math, that's 24 because you got Notre Dame, who is independent. They're the last one to round out the 25. Okay, so as November comes around here, we're full-fledged into it. There's 3 weeks left in the season. Keep an eye on who is still staying the course, who is still running the table, but also where can there be a trap game for these top teams where they got to stay the course, because any given Saturday can happen, okay? Just looking at the table, can Ohio State finally beat Michigan? Can A&M defend against Texas? Can Alabama win against the Sooners this weekend? Like, we'll see where the chips will lay, but this is the month where you start to get to see a good layout of what the college football playoff bracket is going to be, okay? So one of the best fun, exciting times of the year, in my opinion, when it comes to college football. So in the comments below, which team are you pulling for during the college football playoff season? Let me know. Who is your team? All right, as we round out the show, it is time for your questions. And remember, any question that you may have that you would love for me to answer in a following episode, please go ahead and put that down below, and I will love to answer it. So today we have Alex S-V5H. Alex asks, there it is. Alex asks, I think I said that right. College football, why FCS is still Division I? And is it possible for a program to change divisions? Example, from Division 3 to 2, from 2 to FCS, FBS, and of course from FCS to FBS. So essentially, in college sports, how they are broken up, it's Division 1, 2, and 3. And there's so many schools. Like, there's so many schools at large here in the country. So they divide it by divisions. All right, so it's a two-part answer. All right, let's focus on the first part, why FCS is still Division I. FCS stands for Football Championship Subdivision, okay? FBS stands for Football Bowl Subdivision. So in its acronym, subdivision, so that's where that's the distinction. You have Division I. It used to be known as Division 1A and Division 1 AA. Okay, but I think it was a 2006 in my notes. Yeah, 2006, they split it based off of the playoff, what they do in the postseason. So the FBS is the bowl system, right? Whereas the championship series is they have a bracket for those schools. Now, the reason why it was created is to give fair play and equal footing with universities that have a football program, but they don't have the vast pool of resources when it comes to scholarships, training facilities, alumni, honestly, because one of the stipulations to be in the FBS prior to 2023, and we'll talk about this, was you had to have at least 15,000 of paid attendance at your home games. So that's also a struggle for some of these other schools, like 15,000 people on a regular basis to watch your football games. Like, that was a requirement. They did away with that. So that's why it's still a subdivision. It's mainly for fair play. If you're a gamer, that's kind of like the same thing. Like, most of these online video games, you'll have like certain pools where you have the most fair play, as opposed to playing somebody else that's played it for, let's say, 10 plus years. You're playing with the people that, oh, I'm also new to this game. I'm being matched with other people that are like my experience. Okay. So it's mainly, that's the reason why there's a split. And I don't see that changing just because of fairness. Okay. Now, is it possible for a program to change divisions? 100%. The challenge of that is like I said before, if you have an FCS school that doesn't have the requirements to be an FBS, then that's where either the university or the athletic director have to figure out, okay, what do we need to do in order to get to the FBS? Because obviously FBS means more money, more national recognition, more branding, like all that stuff. So there are perks, but at the same time, you can see in some FCS schools, like there are some FCS schools that are just crushing it and are very happy with their status with being FCS. One comes to mind is North Dakota State, right? The Bisons, They're running the table right now. They're doing really good, and they've also have some very great. I think Carson Wentz is the big name that came from that school, but it's not to say that FCS is chomping at the bit to go into the FBS, but there are some schools that want to. And in my research to answer your question, I found out that there's a school called Sacramento State Hornets. They reportedly filed an application to become a FBS school as an independent in the 2026 season. So you may see Sacramento State Hornets on the big screen when it comes to all these major networks, which is pretty cool. Now, what are those requirements? Well, I have it kind of written down because this is actually kind of fresh. This came out in 2023. So the first thing is that the application fee jumped from $5,000 to $5 million. So there's that. The attendance requirement that I said before is no longer a requirement. They did away with that to open the door for potential more FCS schools to jump up. But here's interesting too. The requirement to provide 90% of the total allowable scholarships across 16 sports and a minimum of 210 scholarships annually. That goes into effect in the year 2027. So that alone kind of should give you an opportunity to understand, like, yeah, not only do we want to go to the FBS, but we need the infrastructure when it comes to resources and money, finances, in order to do that particular jump of, promotion, if you will. So it all goes back to the overseeing body, which is the NCAA. They look after all that stuff. And honestly, with these requirements, that also puts pressure on the FBS schools currently. So you need to have a sustainable, we need to meet this criteria in order to be in the FBS. Some schools aren't going to have to worry about that, but there's some schools that are like, oh, we just made it by, so we got to continue to, continue that status essentially. Okay. So that's pretty much the main difference to answer your question. Okay. So if you have a question, please ask me below and I would love to answer it in next week's episode. Okay, that is today's show. I hope you are enlightened with the middle eight explanation and just to give a pulse on today's sports topics. Okay, so our quick hits as we close today's show is I'm really excited for college football in November. The NBA Cup group play will continue, or better yet, will conclude this weekend as far as a group play. Then we'll see which teams survive to go into the knockout stage, which is cool. In the NFL, you are definitely seeing some of the teams really separating themselves from the mediocre to the greats. And so as November continues on, watch some great football. I can't wait for that. But that is today's episode. Catch the Lurks Lessons Show on YouTube and on Spotify. And happy learning, and I'll see you next week.